Family coming into dementia units often say, oh, well, mum can't think now, so it's just cares that are important now. When mum can think, she just can't remember. I mean, she might not be able to think as well as those dementia residents that come in doing crosswords and newspapers, and many do, but she can still think, and that still needs to be considered. I mean, it's very important. Thinking and remembering are quite different. Just because you can't remember, it doesn't mean that you can't think. And just because you can't remember in the here and now, in the present moment, just because you can't remember that, it doesn't mean you can't remember in the past. So all of these considerations need to be taken into account. And indeed, those people coming into dementia units who can do crosswords and who can read, they really need to be taken into account, because it's just one big classroom in a dementia unit. There's no streaming, and there's no consideration that some people have quite good cognition, or very good cognition actually. Some people can think really well. They're excellent at crosswords, better than Joe Bloggs and the average population. They communicate well, they read the paper, they're articulate, but they have a very poor present memory, hence being in a dementia unit. But that's quite different to someone who's completely shut off and shut down and has very little cognition. So that's why it needs to be taken into consideration. There's a vast range. All these people, are put together in one classroom where they live, they breathe, they sleep, they eat, all together 24/7 henceforth. It's just remarkable that they can adapt. It's remarkable that all of them can adapt, of course, but it is remarkable that those that have better cognition than the others do adapt. The reason why it's amazing that they adapt is because they have not got or are not given the resources to be able to keep their cognition going. That's the difficult point. They come into the unit, they've been doing crosswords every day, reading the paper every day, then they come through the door and the power of attorney chooses to discontinue the newspaper, saying, oh, well, mum can't remember, she can't think, she can't read, when in fact mum can. So that's why a lot of education's needed on this, really, so much education, for power of attorneys especially. So if you are not the power of attorney in a family, and you know that mum reads, and you certainly know she does crosswords, and you're a big reader, so you know how valuable reading is. It's like, life and limb reading if you're a big reader. But if the power of attorney doesn't consider that, the paper's very important, reading or books or whatever, because they don't read, as a sibling, just really try and put on the pressure to get the newspaper subscription going, to get the magazines into the unit. Really, it's a human right issue, isn't it? For that to be able to happen for a parent if they're in a dementia unit, because otherwise, if the power of attorney cuts off the subscription for the newspaper or stops the National Geographic coming in, or whatever article or magazine it is, the dementia resident has absolutely no authority. They have no jurisdiction over their accounts or their finances. They're totally dependent on the power of attorney. So if the power of attorney just flat blank decides not to have the subscription or the magazine articles, how, through the estate or the will or whatever, how about you as a loving son or loving daughter just pays for the subscription anyway, even if it doesn't come out of mum or dad's account, even if it comes out of your account, it's not too much. Do the subscription, get mum or dad to get that subscription or their favourite magazines, and in that way at least they have their resources at hand. I mean, you can't keep up your cognition, really you can. Some people remarkably do. I have witnessed this on one occasion, but most of us that are big readers, you've got to be able to keep reading to keep the cognition up. If that reading's taken away or the crosswords taken away, it's very, very difficult to keep the cognition going without the resources at hand. And so that's why resources are so important for people that have been lifelong readers, that do crosswords, to at least keep that going. Actually, for those dementia residents who are not big readers when they come into the unit, they do start to a limited degree getting an interest in reading again once the karaoke songs go up on Netflix and David Attenborough comes on board and they want to know about the animals and they see everyone else reading. They take an interest as well and start to make an effort with their reading and at least skimming the pictures and seeing what's going on the Netflix and referring to the subtitles, at least in part. So reading is really not to discount anybody with reading. I mean, if they're not interested, fine. If the dementia resident doesn't want to read, is not interested, has never read, shows no interest, that's a different story. But most dementia residents do want to read or at least peruse books to some degree. And it's not dependent. The wonderful thing about reading and crosswords and the newspaper is that they can be independent in this effort. It gives them that autonomy and jurisdiction over their own time and own resources and own wish and will to do something. That's the important thing. Walking's a different story. It's a very difficult basket because to go out and walk, of course, they need to have a relative taking them, and that's another story, isn't it? But at least with the reading, those resources, they can have at hand and be independent with that and get a nice, experience, pleasure, interest, cognition, everything you get from reading the wonderful written word and the wonderful pictures that go with it these days, and reading for Netflix, for karaoke, for David Attenborough, for subtitles on the Crown, for reading your name on the door of your room, there's the menu for lunch, breakfast, dinner, lots of things to read. It's important to be able to keep up this skill if at all you can, but you do need resources to be able to do that. Practice makes perfect and all that. Keep the muscles strong. You've got to keep it working. So similarly with reading and the cognition, especially for dementia residents, cognition is so important and valuable. It's the only thing that enables them to manage to distance from their dementia stress. So it's more important, even more important, for people to have access to reading, because it's that reading, that cognition, that focus, that concentration that gives them a new direction in their thinking to be able to garner those quality thoughts, quality thinking, quality then communication, etc. So I've written about all these topics in these books: The Resident's Voice from a Dementia Unit and The Resident's Rise from a Dementia Unit. So please, on Amazon and my website, pietavalentine.com. Good reading, easy reading, positive. It's, the dementia resident's perspective. There's challenges and there's difficulties and there's hardships, but overall it's very positive read and educational and interesting. I think you'll find it. So please subscribe and thank you for your interest. Thank you.